The confirmation did not arrive softened by celebration or wrapped in careful phrasing. It came abruptly, stripped of ambiguity, cutting through years of speculation with a single, undeniable truth. In a moment that caught even seasoned observers off guard, Heughan acknowledged what many believed would never be spoken aloud. He was married. No qualifiers, no evasions, just fact. The world reacted instantly. For years, Sam's personal life had been shielded behind an immaculately maintained barrier of privacy. Interviews were sidestepped, questions gently rerouted, rumors left to dissolve without response. That prolonged silence fostered an unspoken assumption that if marriage ever entered the picture, it would remain unseen. That is why the confirmation felt less like news and more like a rupture. Fans were not merely surprised, they were unprepared. The timing amplified the shock. This was not unveiled during a press tour or cushioned within a promotional narrative. There was no build-up, no framing, no gradual reveal. One moment the status quo held firm, and the next it vanished. The lack of warning made the revelation feel heavier, almost confrontational in its simplicity. Then came the emotional fallout. Social media flooded instantly, not with congratulations, but with disbelief. Longtime fans revisited old interviews, replaying statements once accepted at face value, now searching for subtext. Words that had sounded definitive suddenly felt carefully engineered. Slowly, an uncomfortable realization set in: the privacy had never been accidental. It had been actively guarded. And that realization stung. What unsettled many wasn't the marriage itself, but the depth of secrecy surrounding it. Years of assumptions collapsed in minutes. Entire fan narratives unraveled, replaced by the understanding that a major part of Sam's life had unfolded entirely beyond public awareness. The distance between perception and reality suddenly felt vast, and questions multiplied. Why confirm now after such disciplined silence? Why choose clarity at this moment rather than continue withholding it? Some speculated the decision wasn't impulsive, but overdue. That it marked the conclusion of a long, deliberate negotiation between privacy and truth, one Sam had finally decided to end on his own terms. That interpretation gained momentum. The mainstream media response was swift but measured. Headlines emphasized, confirms, rather than reveals, acknowledging that this was neither a leak nor a misstep. It was intentional. Yet even as outlets reported the fact, they skirted the detail already dominating fan discourse: the bride. Almost immediately, attention shifted away from the marriage itself and toward the identity of the woman involved. Not out of idle curiosity, but because early indications suggested she was not a stranger to the story fans had been following for years. That possibility introduced a second shock, one that cut deeper. Fans began revisiting past moments with renewed urgency. Appearances once dismissed as professional courtesy were re-examined. Interactions previously deemed harmless suddenly carried new weight. The notion that the truth might have been visible all along, merely misinterpreted, proved difficult to process, particularly for those who felt most invested. Emotionally, reactions splintered. Some expressed genuine happiness, insisting that personal fulfillment outweighs public expectation. Others admitted feeling blindsided, not from entitlement, but from confronting how limited their access had always been. The illusion of familiarity dissolved almost instantly. That loss mattered. For years, Sam's careful balance of openness and distance had allowed fans to feel close without being informed. Now, that balance shifted decisively toward reality. The confirmation wasn't cruel, but it was firm. A line had been drawn, and it would not be crossed again. Yet the most unsettling realization was still forming. As speculation about the bride's identity intensified, it became clear this would not be a simple revelation followed by acceptance. The name attached to the marriage, once fully understood, had the power to reframe years of assumed context. Relationships, boundaries, and timelines were about to be reconsidered. By the end of the day, the shock wasn't simply that Heughan was married. It was that his private life had existed so completely beyond reach. The truth didn't just surprise fans, it reminded them that admiration does not equal access. And once the first curtain was lifted, attention shifted inexorably toward the question no one could avoid any longer. Who was the woman who had remained hidden for so long? And why did her identity change everything? As focus turned to the bride, the tone of the conversation shifted immediately. This was no longer about a private marriage, but about who had been present in Sam's life while the world was looking elsewhere. As fragments emerged, fans realized the shock stemmed not from the wedding itself, but from how familiar the name felt once it surfaced. That familiarity altered everything. She was not a random figure from outside his orbit. According to those assembling the pieces, she had existed quietly at the edges of his public life for years. Not prominently, not provocatively, but consistently enough that, in hindsight, the signs felt uncomfortably close. That realization landed hard. Moments once dismissed as coincidence were suddenly recontextualized. Shared timelines, overlapping appearances, subtle patterns in travel and scheduling began to stand out. None of these details had raised alarms on their own. It was only when viewed together that they formed a narrative fans had never anticipated. One that suggested long-term intention rather than spontaneity. Emotions grew complex. Some fans felt embarrassed for missing what now seemed obvious. Others felt misled, not by deception, but by omission. The strongest reactions weren't fueled by anger, but by the discomfort of recognizing how much projection had been placed onto someone who had never invited it. That distinction mattered more than many wanted to admit. Gradually, a quieter understanding emerged. Heughan had never promised transparency about his personal life. In fact, he had repeatedly insisted on the opposite. The shock, then, was not betrayal, but expectation, an expectation collectively built and difficult to dismantle. Industry observers noted how deliberately the revelation had been handled. No dramatic rollout, no exclusive interviews, no emotional framing to soften the impact. The confirmation stood alone, almost austere, reinforcing a message rather than diluting it. This part of my life was never open for negotiation. That clarity, while jarring, began to recalibrate the response. As shock faded, conversations shifted toward acceptance. Not universal, not immediate, but steady. Fans began acknowledging that longevity in the public eye does not entitle anyone to personal disclosure. What lingered wasn't resentment, but curiosity about timing. Why now, after so many years of control? Some suggested stability, not impulse, drove the decision. That once the marriage was firmly rooted, secrecy no longer served a purpose. The confirmation wasn't an invitation, but a boundary, a way to end speculation rather than feed it. By presenting the truth so plainly, Sam removed space for interpretation. The marriage existed, the identity existed. Beyond that, no explanation was owed. In an era defined by constant access and endless commentary, that restraint felt almost radical. Over time, even the loudest debates softened. Shock gave way to reflection. Fans began reassessing their relationship to celebrity narratives, recognizing how easily imagination fills the gaps silence creates. The story shifted from disappointment to recalibration, a reset of perspective. In the end, the revelation accomplished something few announcements ever do. It didn't just confirm a marriage. It dismantled an illusion. It reminded the world that public figures are not mysteries to solve, but people whose lives unfold independently of observation. And that reminder, uncomfortable as it was honest. The world wasn't shocked because Heughan got married. It was shocked because, for the first time, fans were forced to confront how much of the story had never belonged to them at all.